Locked on Syracuse Podcast, Tyler, Aki, Tim Leonard. Today's episode brought to you by RockAuto.com. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the car parts you will ever need. RockAuto.com. It's episode number 400, Tim. 400. I can't believe we're here already.
I can't believe it's such a big number. How am I not sick of you? How are we not sick of Syracuse sports? I mean, I would have guessed we're at 200, not 400. That is a ludicrous number to me.
I don't know if it's a birthday, an anniversary, whatever it is. We've got the guy to have on for episode number 400. We've got the Athletics' Matthew Gutierrez. He's going to do all things Syracuse basketball. We're going to get into Kamari lands, all that good stuff. And we've got our defensive back countdown all the way down to number 2. So let's get to it. Here is Matthew Gutierrez.
You are Locked on Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, it's that time of year. Recruiting's heating up. We've got football right around the corner, and there's even an alliance that's being thrown into the mix as well. And who better to bring on for our 400th episode than Matthew Gutierrez from The Athletic. Matthew, thanks so much for joining us. You're out in nature right now, kind of traveling around. You've been all over the place, it feels like, but this is a van trip for you now?
Yep, upstate New York now. I'm going to be in Lake George shortly. So Joe Girard territory, beautiful, as you guys know, having gone to Syracuse, beautiful weather, July, August, September, October, and then it starts to, not get as beautiful. But it's really until mid-October, it's great. So I'm trying to soak up some sun, go for some hikes. Green Lakes right near Cuse is awesome. But we could do a whole nother podcast on the outdoor stuff.
Right. You brought up the van, and when you texted us, hey, I might be doing this from a van, I was like, oh God, we're like about to be on a canceled Barstool show or something like that. I didn't know what we were getting into.
Hey, all I need is good Wi-Fi right now, and can do it from anywhere, right? So that's the flexibility of today. We can all, be pretty flexible with work and get things done wherever. So anytime I go outside, I try to, I would even write stories outside on my notebook sometimes, and then transfer it over to the computer just to get outdoor time. This, when it's nice weather, especially because it's so limited in upstate.
And by the way, if anyone wants to check out Goody's lovely background here, we are on YouTube now. We got to plug that because this is the first week of the YouTube show. So subscribe wherever you can to the YouTube page. But Goody, you seem like you're in a good spot there. Syracuse basketball recruiting maybe in a little bit of a rough patch.
They wish they were Goody right now.
Yeah, it's been better. I think we were all very excited for the 2022 class, the way it was trending. Now this is a little bit of a speed bump. How surprised were you to see the news the other day that Kamari lands decommitted?
I was a little surprised for sure that he did it, in, what was it, August 20th, give or take. Still relatively early in the cycle. I thought he would maybe wait, visit Syracuse. But speaking of visits, that was obviously a pretty big red flag that he had not gone to Cuse at all this summer. Some guys stay off social media, you get it, but it was also worthy of note that he did not post a whole lot. A lot of these guys, Gutierrez, Copeland, Justin Taylor, Benny Williams, they'll retweet, they'll post on IG themselves in Cuse gear occasionally. Just little hints like that to keep fans in the loop. Usually would play a factor in someone coming to campus at some point. So a couple things there. And then I don't think the Syracuse staff would have suggested he go out to play prep ball this season in Arizona. I think that's also something to know. I think the staff would have wanted to keep him in the Northeast area. Obviously, IMG, they've had somewhat of a pipeline now, so maybe IMG as well. But so there were, I think, a couple little blocks there to point to looking back that you could say, yeah, you know what, it does make sense.
When you look at now, I don't want to call it a trend, but it kind of is because you've seen all these guys decommit. Do you shoulder any blame, or is this sort of just the changing nature of college basketball?
Yeah, something I know you guys have touched on a bit. I think I look at it two ways. I think there are three anomalies, especially with the Q situations with Darius Baisley, D.R. Johnson, and now Kamari Lance, right? Three completely separate situations. For all we know, these three might have never said a word to each other ever in life, right? That said, this is a trend, right? It is three people. It is worth keeping an eye on. I think if you're Syracuse, and I would envision the staff does this, but you want to make sure you're really having a conversation about who you're targeting, who you're offering, and also who you're accepting offers from, right? Making sure these are guys who, as Jim Boeheim says, really want to come here, which is what any coach is looking for. And the Baisley situation, we both know we were I think rising seniors about to be accused. That was very last minute, $1 million New Balance deal. You kind of get that one, but the commitment from Dior Johnson, I think, was always met with skepticism, and then Kamari Lands as well, that he didn't visit. It was an out of the blue commitment in April, if you guys remember, following the Sweet 16. Nobody really, usually we kind of have an idea of guys coming, right? Copeland, Taylor, for example. We had no idea about Lands for the most part. From Indiana, not really a place Syracuse recruits either. So a couple of things there. I think the staff will have to, hopefully keep an eye on this and just be a little bit more pointed to who they're getting commitments from. Because as we know, these are all top dogs in their classes. And so maybe that's another thing to keep in mind, that Cuse has really had the most success with just mastering the 4-star guys and developing them over 2-3 year periods.
You mentioned how it was kind of an out of the blue commitment, and that's what people have said. That's basically what I feel like the scuttlebutt is out there. It felt like that was kind of the case with Dior Johnson a little bit too. What have you heard in regards to when they found out that Kamari was committing to Syracuse? Do you think that caught the coaching staff off guard at all when that first happened?
Haven't heard a whole lot on that timing. With most of these in general, at least we know that they usually involve the staff. They inform the staff, hours before, days before. Gutierrez Copeland's case, weeks before they announce their commitment on social media. So I think it depends. With Kamari, I'm assuming he gave heads up. I don't know for sure. Probably to GMAC, probably told him, texted him, called him, and then went ahead and did his post. 1,000% committed, which I think the higher the percentage now, we should deem it the least likely that they're coming.
It's like an inverse scale, it feels like.
Yeah. At this point, we'd almost appreciate, I'm committing to Syracuse as of now, something, because everything changes, right?
0% committed. That's what I need the next Syracuse commit to say.
It's almost
I'm 0% committed. I am probably not going to play here, but hey, enjoy it while you can.
And don't say Syracuse is my dream school. Just don't utter those words. That usually backfires. It was another one. Carmelo Anthony's my favorite player. I guess not anymore. Oh, well.
Yeah, exactly. Or the University of Syracuse is obviously a popular one.
Yes.
Mostly on the football side, though. We could do a whole
mostly, football.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like it's all football, really. I feel like the basketball guys, I guess I don't know if they communicate that with them or whatever the case. Anyway, where were we, though? Something about, Lands?
Yeah, do you think that the coaching staff was surprised when he committed in the first place?
I don't think they were surprised because they had him as a priority, and they were selling him on the idea you guys have talked about this, of becoming, that buddy role, which coincidentally they told like 2 other people as well, which is an interesting recruiting philosophy, something that not a lot of coaches would subscribe to. Some do that other than Syracuse, some don't. But Syracuse did tell multiple people that they could fill Buddy Boeheim's role, including Justin Taylor and Kamari Lands. So I'm not saying that played part of it. Perhaps Kamari, saw Justin as a quote unquote threat, but it does seem more likely, what he told Mike Waters. It's the NIL more than anything in that case. So anyway, to answer your question, I think Cuse knew about it. I believe GMAC tweeted orange emojis, or other members of the staff did, right? So they're excited about these things as much as, even the Dior situation. Coach Boeheim saying, what was the line? It was kind of crazy. It was like, I don't commit to anybody or whatever that line was. Yeah. You guys can pull it up. He said that on the Zoom call with a bunch of us. And it's like, come on, you guys were excited that you got this marquee recruit. You were committed to him if he was going to come. And so they might have said the same thing with this, but they were excited when Kamari committed. And they felt very good about this class. I still think they feel pretty good so far, though, with Justin and Gutierrez Copeland, two quality guards that fit their system well.
All right, we'll get back to Goody in just a second, but first, this episode brought to you by RockAuto.com. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts that you need. And why you, the customer, often endure pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning like, is your Odyssey an LX or an EX? You don't know the answer to that question. And then the guy behind the counter has to order the parts on their computer. It's slow, their internet's down, whatever. It's a hassle. But you've got rockauto.com at home on your laptop, on your desktop, or in your pocket on your phone. So you can save time and money when using rockauto.com because you'll save 30, 50, maybe even 100% on the same parts at a car dealer than at a car dealership or at a chain store. For example, a fuel pump might be $350 from a chain store. You'll knock off over $100 by going to Rock Auto, $216 from rockauto.com. It's a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years now. Go to rockauto.com right now, see all the parts they have available for your car or truck, and be sure to write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. Again, write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need, rockauto.com. So Kamari lands, he's reopening his recruitment. I know he's mentioned Syracuse still is in the mix, I would guess, but like the way that you see it, is the door officially closed with Kamari?
Yeah, it is. I know, he said in interviews it's still a top priority or something. He's just saying that to maybe not burn a bridge or just to be polite more than anything. He's not coming to Syracuse. Same with Theo Johnson. I think he had mentioned Syracuse was still a top school or some nonsense. I mean, when you decommit like this, you're cutting the ties, right? It's not a good look on either party, and I think everybody understands that. Reopening my recruitment is a nice way of saying it, that you've decommitted and that you're looking elsewhere. He will not suit up for Q's. I don't know if there's really any examples, maybe an anomaly here or there of a guy.
I guess like Kofi Coburn is probably the closest thing we've seen to that, really.
How about Patrick
John
Depay?
Bull? John Bull
when he went Duke and then
Bull.
thought it was Syracuse. Yeah, right.
yeah, we probably don't see him getting too much court time at the Q's. He's a morale booster, though, right? He's a hilarious.
Oh, for
figure.
sure. Yes, love him. Love the kid.
Yeah, so on the Kamari timetable and all that, and you brought up Mike Waters' great article, how he broke down that NIL was a factor. When you read that and that he wanted to be recruited under the NIL umbrella, what'd you make of that? Because I think Tyler and I were thinking, shouldn't that have always kind of been in his head? But I guess it is now officially official. And I don't know if that's an indictment on what Syracuse has done NIL-wise or what. Just what did you make of that quote?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's a topic worth discussing. A few things. One is, I do see it as an indictment on what Cuse has done. I mean, from everything we've heard, they're behind the 8 ball on the NIL. I spoke with both Quadir Copeland's family and Justin Taylor, and they both said on the visit it was a very minor part. It was basically a kind of an overview / walkthrough of NIL, which you can get through a Google search or on YouTube or through a podcast, right? Like you don't need to be on campus to do that. So I think they need to pick up the pace if they want to make sure that they're in the hunt on the NIL front by, presenting real statements, real facts, real numbers. Here's how much you can make here based on what we know, right? Based on our projections. Kentucky is already telling guys, for example, this is how many followers you'll get when you come here. This is how much money you'll make on Instagram and Twitter. This is how much fanfare you'll get in the community. This is how many restaurants you might be able to promote and make money on. So for sure, behind the 8 ball, I think, they might have had a better chance at Kamari if they had really presented the NIL as an opportunity rather than just something kind of on the checklist to do. So that's number one. And I fully believe him though on that. I think he's seeing the figures that some of these guys are getting, right? I mean, not just the Alabama quarterbacks of the world who are going to pull in $1 million. But there are plenty of players who will be able to make a very nice cushion, if you will, for a year in college, right? They'll be able to, perhaps buy a car, go out to eat, throw a couple parties, rent a nice house, maybe in the Outer Banks or something fun. You get the idea.
Take the ferry to Chapel Hill.
Yeah. So I think, in all seriousness, though, I think there's a lot of opportunities for these guys to make money, and I think Kamari realizes Syracuse might not necessarily be that place. Not to say Buddy Boeheim won't rake in money, which he will, But there are a lot of places that you can do that. I also think he's going to team up with Chance Westry, and I think Westry's that recruitment kind of fell off the table quite a bit, not only at Syracuse but other schools. And it's possible that Westry's family, maybe these families all talk, right? Maybe they said, look, I think you can get a lot of money elsewhere. And so maybe I'm not saying that happened, that conversation went down, but that's a possibility as well. There's a lot of guys coming in people's ears, including in Kamari lands. Here, you can make this, you can make that. Bill Self takes no time, right, to make that offer. So who knows? Maybe other schools very well would have been recruiting him, even though he was verbally committed to Syracuse.
Staying on the topic of NIL here, and you mentioned how Syracuse is kind of behind. And one thing that Tim and I sort of noticed too is when you look at some of the deals that have been signed, it's like Cameo. It's all individual stuff. It feels like that you could go out and kind of pursue yourself. We haven't really seen the restaurant, the car dealership, all that stuff with Syracuse. Are there NIL deals that we're just not aware of? And do those even need to be publicized too?
Yeah, good question. I guess they really don't, right? They don't need to be publicized as much as we think or posted about. Yeah, we've seen, I think JG3 with a couple camps. Some other guys I would assume can run camps in their hometown, $30-$50 a camper for a few hours. That's an easy way to get 50, 100 kids and make a few grand, on a weekend. I think we'll definitely see that coming in the future. But as far as everything else goes, yeah, I mean, I really believe Syracuse is really behind on this. I don't think they made it a priority. Again, Buddy will make a lot of money. I think Joe Girard will make a lot because they're recognizable faces. And I don't doubt that Benny, once fans get to know him and the community, guys like him will be able to make money once the season starts. But
autograph signings, I think, would be a big thing with those emerging stars.
Exactly. At Destiny, like Buddy's going to do that soon, I think. So there's a lot of opportunities for them. But to your point, it does very much look and feel like this is kind of just guys on their own doing what they want to do, and there's not really a whole lot of structure from the athletic department's viewpoint.
Yeah, I think they had a couple classes that they're going to do with them, but it's not really like as much of a collaborative effort, I think, that we would like to see at this point. Maybe it'll change, and I think it's definitely important for recruiting going forward. As far as what's next in the 2022 class now, I know a guy that you've written about a lot over at The Athletic is Chris Bunch, and it seems like he's had a good relationship with the Syracuse staff for a while. They've been after him for a while. He popped into my head just because he plays a similar position to Kamari Lands. What do you think is kind of the latest on Chris Bunch and where he's at with Syracuse?
Yeah, Chris Bunch, one of his first high major offers was Syracuse way back early in the pandemic. I think it was March or April, based on, I believe, mostly film. But I know Alan Griffin has developed a great relationship with him, and he's also picked up. I think we texted about it. Hop recently offered. I believe Alabama is now in the mix with him. He played pretty well this summer. From what I heard, he's got a pretty smooth shooting stroke, prototypical Syracuse target. Similar to Dominic Barlow, really, Peter Carey, a lot of these guys. I think Syracuse, sees that athletic, mobile 4 guy, right, that they've gone after for a while. So I think Chris Bunch is still very much a priority. You look at this class, you really need I think a forward or a big to round it out. You really need to solidify it with that. I think the staff knows that. There's obviously the transfer portal to rely on last minute, and that could very much be a huge benefit for schools, Syracuse included, to plug in holes depending on who leaves, who goes. Buddy's presumed to go. Cole Swider doesn't have to stay. Jimmy Boeheim's going to be gone. Does Benny go after a year or two? All questions at the forward spot. So I think that forward position is really important. And as you asked there, Chris Bunch is really at the heart of it. We mentioned Dominic Barlow. He's a similar player. He's probably seemingly better than Bunch, I think. Then Peter Carey's probably the weakest of the 3, and he's probably more of a backup recruit at this point. One thing to know too is I don't know how much they target centers, right? I think they're going to keep it to the forwards, maybe a flyer here and there to a center, but they haven't really recruited the center position all that well, as we know. And so I think they're better sticking at what they've done much more consistently, which is that 3-4 hybrid situation.
I want you to put your athletic director, marketing hat on. You are John Wildhack. You are in charge of all of the sort of stuff that goes on with NIL. Because I think I saw a figure the other day that it was that company Open Doors, who is doing a lot of stuff with college athletics and NIL. They said they previously anticipated college athletes would bring in $750 million. They have completely revised that number to now $1.5 billion. If you are John Wildhack, if you are whoever's in charge of NIL at Syracuse, what would you do to make sure that Syracuse is an attractive NIL destination?
I think it's got to be a centerpiece of recruiting, of operations. It may be as far as you go out and hire positions. There's no shortage of cash flowing through big schools like Syracuse. They're bringing in a ton of money through the ACC payout. Large college basketball home crowds, probably the best home crowd situation in the country. It's either Syracuse or Kentucky as far as revenue coming in and consistently with fans. So you have enough money to go out and hire someone to handle NIL exclusively, maybe even two people, and make sure that every recruit who comes to campus meets with them, gets specific presentation tailored to them with their name, their image maybe on a PowerPoint. You walk them through, here's how much money you'll make, show examples. Buddy Boeheim obviously would be a good one to show. And here's how much you make. Here's how many followers our stars have gotten over the years, getting big accounts too. So I think that's where you got to go. You have to invest heavily in this and make sure it's a legit part of your whole operation, not just something you feel pretty good about and will do because you have to, but it's really an opportunity. And the schools that I think really embrace it will do the best with it, and they'll benefit on the recruiting front, not only with men's basketball and football, but the other sports as well. There are some really good, talented women's soccer players, women's field hockey players, volleyball players who may be really good recruits, and that they might have 10,000 Instagram followers or more, and so those are athletes as well. I think schools can welcome and capitalize on it and bring in and really, really embrace them.
All right, we're going to cut part one with Matthew Gutierrez there. Plenty more stuff. We'll dive into some football a little bit tomorrow on part two. But speaking of football, it is that time of year again. All eyes are now turning to football, NFL, college football, tons of games to bet on as the gridiron starts to rev back up. And as always, the best place, the number one spot for all your pro and college football betting action this season is BetOnline, the top online sportsbook out there. You can get all the updated odds, props, and contests, including BetOnline's biggest $500,000 NFL mega contest and the world's largest $200,000 NFL Survivor contest open now at betonline.ag. Just type that in your mobile browser or on a website. Just put in betonline.ag. Sign up today for a free account. Use our promo code that's locked on, all one word. It gets you 100% welcome bonus on your first deposit. So if you've got a future you're thinking about for the NFL, a Super Bowl dark horse maybe, just go over to betonline.ag. Don't forget that promo code. It's locked on, all one word, for 100% welcome bonus at BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts.
All right, the countdown continues. We're down to number 2 in our most important defensive backs. In fact, we've only got 4 more players left to count down here on the show, because guess what? 10 days away. 10 days until Syracuse football takes the field against Ohio. I can't believe it. It is whipped around as fast as possible. And I'm looking at this defensive backs, and we've got a couple of studs left to preview here. But number 2 is going to go to Garrett Williams for me. Garrett Williams was a guy who stepped up in a big-time role a season ago for the Syracuse team as the cornerback number 2 alongside Ife Melifonwu. If Garrett Williams doesn't play as well as he did last season and get kind of thrown into the fire of the entire 2020 year, that could have been a disastrous season. It was already a bad season, and I'm sure many would label it as disastrous, but it would have went to another tier if Garrett Williams did not play the way that he did.
Yeah, I think he's the best player on this football team right now going into this year. I think Sean Tucker's great. There are other guys, but if you were doing a NCAA college football, which fingers crossed is actually supposed to come back soon, and hopefully some players make some money off of it. But if you're doing NCAA college football ratings for the entire Syracuse roster, I don't know what Garrett Williams would be ranked, maybe 88, 89. It depends on what their curve is, I guess. But I think he would be the highest ranked player. Do you agree?
I would probably say yes. It's a good question, and I'm just kind of going through all the guys. Maybe you could talk me into Michael Jones.
Yep.
Because he's got like the stats and everything.
Taj Harris too, I think.
Taj Harris is another good one as well. But yeah, no, I think you make a good point. He's definitely top 2 or 3, no doubt. And there is the case to be made that he is number 1. I'm looking into some of the numbers from a season ago. This is what happens when you are a freshman or a first-year player. Again, he was a redshirt freshman last year. But when it is your first time starting on a bad team, you get picked on, right? And the stats back that up. I look last year, 67 targets on him. That was the 6th most in the entire country. You saw quarterbacks trying to feast on him time and time again. And I think he did some things to kind of alleviate some of that. He played over the top of a lot of receivers. You saw a lot of underneath stuff against him, but a pretty good tackler and pretty good in coverage, all things considered.
Yeah, it's interesting because now the challenge for him becomes, can he be the number 1 guy? Where last year there was probably 2 or 3 guys that we now know are in the NFL or at least playing for NFL roster spots. And it seems like Cisco's doing well. It seems like Trill's doing well. Iffy, of course, was the highest drafted of, or I guess Cisco was above Iffy. But anyway, It feels like now it's a different challenge of, can he be the guy? And I'm not too worried about it because, one, it seems like Dino is raving about him in camp, and he doesn't rave about a lot of players. And he's made quotes like, Garrett, are you sure you're going to be here next year? Because the way that he has looked on the football field, and it does seem like he has an NFL future as well. But the other thing that makes me less worried about is he did get picked on a ton last year, and he stood the test. I mean, I remember distinctly being at that UNC game, the first game of the year. We did not know anything about Garrett Williams, really. We just knew that he was on the 2 deep. He was a young guy that was going to start, and they threw his way a lot. And I remember getting on the podcast after with you and saying, that Garrett Williams, like, he was good in that game.
Yeah.
And now, about 10 games later, we realized that he's just that good every game, which is exciting.
Yeah, he was tied for 19th in the country in pass breakups a season ago. That's a great sign. And again, it's going to happen when you're targeted as frequently as he is. I will say one of the things with Garrett, I'm interested to see how this part plays out this year. Again, he's going to be on a lot more wide receiver ones heading into this season. So the talent that he's going up toe-to-toe with is going to spike up a little bit. Another thing is that he had the 2nd most receptions allowed in the entire country. I think part of that was the fact that he was playing over the top of guys, which we'll see. Is he more of a press sort of cover corner this season? I think part of it was he was acclimating to what he was and the situation he was being thrown into. One thing I will say, and I found this extremely impressive, his yards after catch allowed was very, very good. In 30 or more receptions. And most of them, their yards after catch allowed was in the 4 to 7 neighborhood. Garrett's was hovering around 2. So that shows me he's a fantastic tackler. And on top of that, like, I think it was more a result of what the coaching staff may have told him to do. Play over the top, don't get beat. And he wasn't getting beat, and he wasn't letting guys get past him.
He's showing up on NFL mock drafts for a reason, and he looks like he could be a first-round pick. Yeah, I've seen a lot of first rounds out there, so he's got a bright future. If he becomes an NFL prospect, then maybe Deuce Chestnut, knock on wood, falls behind him. Then we're really looking at a DBU is forming here for Syracuse, which is really exciting because you have to have some sort of identity, and it feels like they are building that in the defensive backs room, despite having a pretty rough win-loss record overall as a team. They have really churned out some great DBs. And I think of him as kind of the way I think of Taj Harris. He's in a group with a lot of unknown behind him, but it's really nice to have that surefire leader as the number 1 guy. Like, we know that Garrett Williams is going to be a stud this year. It's just how much of him, or how much can he be a stud compared to being the 3 or 4 cornerback last year, now becoming that number 1 guy.
Yeah, and listen, this season is going to dictate his draft, obviously. And I think you and I are in the camp that he's probably going after this year, especially if he's given that. But let's be honest, too. there is also a world that exists where these number ones just start to torch him a little bit, maybe beat him over the top. Maybe Syracuse does try to implement a little bit of press stuff with Garrett Williams a little more frequently, as opposed to letting him play and operate with a little more space in front of him and the receiver. And maybe he slides down to a third, fourth round, or God forbid, off a draft board. I don't think that's going to happen, but that world obviously exists when you go up against a spike in talent. And on top of that, the targets that he's going to face is probably going to be fewer than a season ago because he is the top corner. And if he is going alongside Deuce Chestnut, guess who's getting picked on? It's going to be Deuce Chestnut.
Yep. And it's kind of like Trill Williams last year, where he just never got thrown at several times. We could see that with Garrett Williams this year, and then Deuce Chestnut could be the Garrett Williams type player, which, spoiler alert, but I think we're going to get to Deuce Chestnut on the next podcast because there's been so many good things about him. I'm excited to talk about him. But it does feel like Garrett Williams is going to be the guy this year, and I'm not overlooking how valuable he is going to be to this team. It's just, this is a really intriguing DB group. He's definitely the most talented, but again, this is most important. So I think it's kind of a toss-up. You could put him at number 1, but we put him at number 2.
What do you like more? Is it Williams Island or Garrett's Island? I'm trying to. What do we like more?
Probably
here?
Garrett's. It's a little. I mean, there's
you
so
like
many
Garrett's? I like Williams. That's true.
Okay.
That is true.
I like them both.
We'll reconvene.
If we're saying one.
We'll see what rolls off the tongue after week 1, right? He might not have an island after week 1. Maybe he's getting torched week 1. Who knows?
Right.
All right, that's gonna do it for the Thursday episode of the Locked On Syracuse podcast. We'll be back with you all tomorrow on the show. Goody's back. We're gonna talk a little more hoops with you, and also get into some football and the Alliance as well. So be sure to subscribe to the show, Apple, Spotify, and subscribe to us on YouTube. Even if you are subscribed to us on Spotify and Apple, subscribe on YouTube as well, because we'll be throwing some more fun stuff your way throughout the course of the season and all that good stuff. So for Tim,